Be hospitalized due to illness. My boyfriend and younger sister come to see me. But in my ward, they are kissing inseparably. Brother-in-law. In case sister comes back. Don't worry about her. So. In the washroom just separated by a wall. I also stand on tiptoe and kiss my attending doctor. Dr. Chen. Shall we also give it a try? When I am on a business trip and not at home. My neighbor complains in the group. Can the next door be a bit quieter? Don't mislead our child. Seeing the message. I almost immediately open the surveillance on my mobile phone. The bedroom door opens. And my younger sister Cindy is wearing my pajamas. She raises her head, looking at the slowly rotating camera, and provocatively curls the corners of her lips. Then, she kicks away my little dog. Soon, I receive a message from her. Brother-in-law usually looks so gentle. But just now on the bed. It's really a bit overwhelming. Doesn't sister satisfy brother-in-law well usually? Sister has spent so much effort and finally got brother-in-law. If she doesn't hold brother-in-law's heart well, isn't she making wedding clothes for me? I read the WeChat message's expression, Leslie, and directly dial Steven's number. Mia. Are you annoying in the middle of the night? Steven's voice is a bit impatient. The neighbor said that the noise at home is too loud and it disturbs their child. Steven is silent for a moment. They are just being troublesome. We are all neighbors. We see each other all the time. So be more careful. And, why do I hear Cole barking nonstop? Go and see what's wrong with it. What's wrong with a little beast barking a few times? Steven. Cola is a little life after all. Perhaps afraid that I might notice something. Steven says perfunctorily, all right. All right. I'll go and see. Is there anything else? If not, I'll hang up. I curve my lips and smile. I bought you a gift. I'll be back tomorrow. I know. Steven hangs up after saying that. I also put down my phone and look at the delicate tie box on the table. Inside lies a navy blue eye with dark patterns embroidered on it. 2 in all these years with Steven. For every festival, big or small, I will give him a carefully selected gift. Even later, when he no longer even perfunctorily treats me, I still persist. Cindy has laughed at me many times for this, saying that no matter how hard I try, it's just a waste of effort. Steven doesn't like me anymore. Indeed, I'm not stupid. I can feel it. Thinking of these, I can't help but feel a bit annoyed. Simply standing up, I leave the room and directly go to the Garden Veris restaurant on the top floor. The bartender mixes a long aisle and iced tea and hands it to me, joking with a smile. Now very few people order this. I also smile at him. I'm used to drinking it. This drink has a strong aftertaste. When I leave, I can't help but stagger a bit. There is a song playing in the restaurant, which makes me stop unexpectedly. Why do you still like me? A rogue like me? Is it because you are stupid or very great? Everyone here steps on me. How bad is my reputation? But you will never blame me. I lean on the railing and can't help humming softly. I don't even know when I am in tears. The face that has gradually become blurred in my memory suddenly appears vaguely in front of me. Miss. Are you all right? The man's hand shakes gently in front of me. I raise my head and my vision gradually becomes clear. Ryan? I suddenly open my eyes wide and grab his sleeve. The man is slightly stunned. Then he smiles faintly. Sorry. My surname is Chen. But I'm not called Ryan. 3. How could it be? I murmur in a lost voice. My fingers slowly and stiffly loosen. When I take a step back, I stumble. The man reaches out and supports me in time again. Can you stand steadily? I nod and push him away with my hand. The man doesn't stay any longer and turns to leave. I walk to the bar and order another drink. After drinking this drink, I can have a good sleep, right? Alcohol can numb the nerves, make people lose the sense of pain and forget the past. It's really a good thing. But why do I see Ryan again? It's been 5 years. The once unruly teenager now also has a calm temperament. I run over recklessly and hold his arm tightly and won't let go. Miss. You've again. No. You are Ryan. I stand on tiptoe and, when the man is caught off guard, I gently kiss his lips. You see, your tastes are exactly the same. I smile with tears in my eyes. My fingers fall on his collar. Sure enough, there is a clear small brown mole next to the collarbone. Still lying to me. Your mole is still there. I am fascinated and gently touch that small mole, wanting to kiss it like before. But the man in front of me pushes me away. Miss. I say again. I am not Ryan. Does it matter? I murmur. You look exactly the same. Taste exactly the same. And even the mole here on the collarbone is the same. It doesn't matter whether you are called Ryan or not. I smile gently and dreamily. It's enough for me to know that you are him. The man's face was solemn. He seemed to want to say something but was apparently too lazy to talk more with a drunk like me. He pulled away my arm and turned to leave. Perhaps it was because I didn't chase after him and pester him. When the man reached the corner, he looked back at me again. I knew you wouldn't dare to abandon me again. I ran over and hugged him tightly. When he tried to push me away again, I stood on tiptoe and kissed him deeply. Ryan. Don't leave me again. My tears flowed profusely. The man's hand that was pushing me away finally lifted up and gently wiped away the tears on my face. Perhaps it was because of 2 Long Island iced teas. Perhaps it was because the pent-up emotions for 5 years suddenly surged like a tide. Or perhaps it was because of the dirty things that Stephen and my sister did that stimulated me. That night, I must have been very crazy. In my hazy memory, that man seemed to say something to me. Going on a business trip and dying in a woman's bed should make headlines. Right? I didn't answer him. I just threw him on the bed again. When I woke up in the morning, Kevin came out of the bathroom after taking a shower and was getting dressed. I lay on the pillow. The hangover and indulgence made me feel completely drained. My head was dizzy and aching. I looked at Kevin's back. And from the huge floor mirror, I looked at his face. It's really a face that makes me repeatedly have a crush. He reached for his tie. After looking at me in the mirror, he turned around. Perhaps it was because his hair wasn't well taken care of after taking a shower. The whole person looked a bit less cold and resolute than last night. He raised his hand and touched the side of his neck, involuntarily making a sound of hiss. He walked to the bed and handed me the tie, indicating that I should help. You scratch and bite. You're really something. Only then did I see the bite mark on the side of his neck. It was so deep that it was bleeding. The rolled-up sleeve revealed a strong forearm with several red marks scratched by my nails. I couldn't help feeling sorry. I quickly sat up and wanted to help him tie his tie. There was a sharp pain in my waist and abdomen. And I fell softly again. Kevin shook his head and chuckled. Can't do it anymore? I was lying on the bed and caught sight of the empty box and several torn packaging bags on the floor. I turned my face away and didn't look at him. Can you still do it? Kevin tied his tie while saying, try again tonight? I have a flight in the afternoon, and I'm going back to Beijing. After Kevin tied his tie, he looked at me again. Let's formally introduce ourselves. I'm Kevin. I know. You said it last night. And you? I slowly pulled up the quilt to cover my face. There's no need to know. I was just drunk last night. After sobering up, I already understood that he was Kevin, not Ryan. Evan was silent for a moment and nodded. Understood. When he left after getting dressed, I couldn't help taking one last look. I know that maybe in the future, I will never see anyone more like Ryan than him. However, my life is already a complete mess. Why involve an innocent person again? 6 after the plane landed, Steven didn't come to pick me up. I was already used to it. I hailed a taxi and went home. On the way, Cindy sent me a message again. Sister, I'm so sorry. Coke seems to be dying. Soon she sent a photo. Coke was lying in the cage. weakly closing its eyes. Blood was constantly oozing from its mouth and nose. At that moment, I felt as if someone was taking a long nail and forcefully driving it into my heart. That long nail kept stirring and stabbing my flesh and blood, making me extremely painful. Sister, this seems to be the puppy that Ryan brother gave you, right? Ryan brother has been missing for so long. The police say he's dead. Now the dog he gave you is also dying. Sister, tell me, are you a jinx? In Cindy's repeated provocations, the scenes from the past appeared in front of me again. Father grabbed my collar and pushed me out of the house hard. Mia, you are a jinx. You killed your mother. Do you still want to harm me? I don't have a daughter like you. Get out. Who on earth killed my mother? If it weren't for you having a mistress and having an illegitimate daughter only 1 year younger than me, how could my mother be so angry that she died? How dare you still be stubborn? Father raised his hand and gave me a heavy slap. If it weren't for you dating a rogue like Ryan, would your mother be so angry that she got sick? What does it have to do with Ryan? He's not a rogue. Why do you say that about him? Anyway, get out immediately. I, Mr. Zhang, will no longer have a daughter like you from now on. I pressed my chest tightly. The sharp pain in my heart made it almost impossible for me to breathe. Just die like this. If dying can let me see my mother and Ryan, it doesn't seem like such a bad thing. 7 Cokes still died. Stephen casually said. It's just a dog. Just buy another one. I held the dying Coke. It whimpered very weakly and tried very hard to open its eyes and look at me again. But it really didn't have the strength. In the end, it just licked the palm of my hand gently like before and closed its eyes forever. I seemed to be unable to cry anymore. Even though Coke's body became cold and stiff in my arms, Steven seemed to have a little bit of guilt. Okay, Mia. Let's bury Coke properly. I thought that if I had a knife in my hand at this moment, I would surely have stabbed it deeply into Steven's heart. But in the end, I still said nothing. Just nodded obediently. Steven breathed a sigh of relief. After burying Cola, Steven said there was something at the company, and he had to work overtime tonight. He told me to rest well at home and then left. Unable to sleep, I drank half a bottle of wine again. My heart seemed paralyzed. I began to feel palpitations, shortness of breath, and intense pain and tightness in my chest. In the last half-minute before losing consciousness, the desire to survive prompted me to dial the emergency number. When I woke up again, I was lying on a hospital bed. There were cold instruments attached to my chest. A male doctor was examining me. He was wearing a mask, revealing only a pair of cold eyes. His slender fingers were pressing around my heart. I felt a little pain and couldn't help but let out a low moan. The doctor's eyes darkened slightly, and his voice was even more serious. You have heart disease and still drink alcohol. Are you courting death? Hearing his voice, my still aching heart couldn't help but tremble violently. I subconsciously murmured, Chen. I am Kevin. He took off his mask, revealing his entire handsome face. I saw the small half of a bite mark exposed on his neck. The tooth marks were still clear. For the 3rd time. Don't mistake me again. After he finished speaking, he put the mask back on. Then he reached out and pulled up the quilt to cover me. His voice was calm and unwavering, but his earlobes were faintly flushed. Rest first. After the specific examination report comes out, we will make further treatment arrangements. I want to be discharged. Nonsense. I said I want to be discharged. Before I could finish speaking, Steven pushed open the door of the ward. Kevin looked back at Steven. Steven also nodded at him. Doctor, how is my girlfriend? She has heart problems and still drinks alcohol. Is this how you be a boyfriend? Kevin's voice sounded very serious. Steven was stunned for a moment and quickly said, It's my fault. I will pay attention in the future. Kevin didn't say anything more. After glancing at me, he left the ward. Steven walked to my bedside. What's wrong with your heart? An old problem. Is there nothing serious after the examination? Nothing serious. That's good. After finishing speaking, Stephen sat down by the bed. After sitting down, he began to send messages nonstop. He didn't ask me another word. I looked at his face, still showing the swelling and haggardness from a hangover. Soon I shifted my gaze. Stephen's messages almost never stopped. After a while, I said, "If you are busy, go back first. I will rest for a while, and then be discharged." But Stephen stood up. "Xinning is coming to see you. She can't find the ward. I'll go and pick her up." I nodded. "Go ahead." About 20 minutes after Stephen left, Kevin came in again. He looked at various data and poured me a glass of water. "Is your boyfriend gone?" "He went out to pick someone up." "Do you like him very much?" "Yes." Kevin stood by the bed and seemed to have something he wanted to say but hesitated. "Dr. Ive Chen, do you have something to say to me? I just saw your boyfriend and a girl in the garden downstairs. They looked very intimate." Kevin hesitated for a moment and then spoke. "Originally, I shouldn't meddle in other people's business. But Mia, I think you shouldn't be deceived." I raised my eyes and looked at him calmly. "I know. That girl is my sister." Kevin was stunned for a moment. "Mia." His brows furrowed even deeper. "Why don't you break up?" I suddenly sat up, pulled out the infusion tube and got out of bed. Before Kevin could react, I had already taken his hand. His hand was very warm. His fingers were slender and his knuckles were strong. My hand was very cold. Kevin subconsciously tried to withdraw his hand, but I held on to him and directly pulled him into the bathroom. At the moment the bathroom door was locked from the inside. The door of the ward also opened. It was Stephen's voice. Where is she?" "Brother-in-law, won't my sister have been discharged?" Cindy's voice was as sweetly cloying as always. "Who cares?" The sound of locking the door rang out. Then Stephen couldn't wait to press someone onto the bed, along with the rustling sound of taking off clothes. "We haven't tried it in the hospital yet." "But brother-in-law, what if my sister comes back?" "So what if she comes back? Even if she sees it, she can only turn a blind eye." "Brother-in-law." Cindy's voice was quickly drowned out. There was unconceivable surprise in Kevin's eyes. But at the moment I stood on tiptoe and kissed him. He regained his coldness and rationality. He intended to push me away with his hand, but I gently bit his lip and whispered almost inaudibly, "Drive. Chen. Shall we try to?" "Mia." He lowered his voice and pushed me away again. I didn't resist. I took a soft step back and leaned against the wall. Just like that. I lowered my head, drooped my eyes, and bit my lip tightly. Tears fell to the ground one by one. Kevin was silent for half a minute. When the sound outside became disgustingly loud, he suddenly took a step forward, pinched my chin, lowered his head and kissed me deeply. I smelled a very faint smell of disinfectant. That taste suppressed the faint fragrance that made me sink that night. Kevin kissed forcefully and domineeringly. There was nothing under my hospital gown. In his eyes, gradually, lust was growing. 9 at the moment we were both lost. I bit his ear and whispered softly, "Dr. Chen, how do you feel?" He didn't speak, but his movements obviously became suddenly heavier. About 20 minutes later, in my chaotic consciousness, I vaguely heard a suppressed scream from a woman. Then again, there were footsteps and the sound of a door opening and closing. Finally, it was already calm outside. My face was not pressed against the cold wall. Kevin's hand was there, and half of my face was buried in his palm. In the corner of my eye, I saw a corner of his white coat. From time to time, it brushed against my thigh. "Dr. Chen." My hand reached back and landed on his sweaty abdominal muscles. "You are much better than my boyfriend." Kevin lowered his head and bit me hard on the shoulder. At the moment when I was in so much pain that tears came out, Kevin's hoarse voice rang in my ear. "Mia, you take care of yourself. 10 until I was discharged from the hospital. I didn't seek Evan again. After completing the discharge procedures, I asked the little nurse, "Is Drive Chen very busy these days?" "I haven't seen him, Dr. Ave. Chen has some family matters and has taken leave." I was a little disappointed. Well, I originally wanted to thank Drive Chen in person. I'm afraid there will be no chance in the future. When going downstairs, Stephen was waiting for me by the car. Rarely. Cindy didn't follow. "What would you like to eat?" "Let's go eat first." "I have no appetite." I got in the car and looked ahead calmly. Last night I dreamed of Ryan. He asked me to go to the cemetery on his behalf to see Aunt. Stephen's hand holding the steering wheel trembled slightly. "I'll take you there and visit Aunt by the way." On the way, Stephen bought 2 bouquets of flowers. After paying respects to Ryan's mother, it was already getting late. When leaving the cemetery, I suddenly looked at Stephen. "Stephen, do you think Ryan is really dead? If not, where should he be now?" The police also said that after Ryan smuggled himself out that year, he was very likely to have died in the Philippines. Stephen was a little irritable and stubbed out his cigarette. "It's been so many years. Can't we stop mentioning him? But I always feel that he isn't dead. During this period, I always dream of him." Stephen suddenly sneered. "What are you pretending to be so infatuated for, Mia?" "Less than half a year after Ryan ran away, you threw yourself into my arms. These years, I've been good to you, right? But how did you treat me?" When Stephen said this, it seemed that he suddenly couldn't control his suppressed anger. He took a step forward and reached out to grab my neck. "After being with me for so long, you won't even let me touch you. You said there was an obstacle in your heart, and asked me to give you some time. Okay, I'll give you time. How many years has it been?" Stephen said and slapped me. "No wonder everyone likes your younger sister and no one likes you. This jinx." I covered my face. "I didn't force you to be with me. I was crazy back then." "Okay." Stephen sneered. "Mia, that's it. From now on, I have nothing to do with you. A daughter like you who can't live without a man is really disgusting." He looked at me with contempt, as if I were really like an insignificant weed in this mountain, and not worthy of his slightest attention. He turned and walked towards the car. I tried to call him. "Stephen, if you leave me here, how can I go back alone?" Stephen didn't turn back. "If you can't go back, just die here. Anyway, you are just a useless waste." At this moment, the sky completely darkened. The mountain wind was bitterly cold, and Stephen's car quickly disappeared. I stood by the empty mountain road, motionless, letting the deep night devour me completely like this. 11 Ryan was the first person I liked. He was my first boyfriend. Just like a good girl always likes a libertine who is completely different from herself, I was also deeply attracted by Ryan. He skipped classes, fought, smoked, drank, and dyed his hair. His schoolwork was also a mess. But I always felt that he wasn't as bad as others thought. Occasionally when he came back to school for classes, he would never disturb the teacher and other classmates. When at school, he had never bullied others either. Once, I saw him using his second-hand motorcycle to help an old lady who collected scraps transport waste. Later, I fell in love with him. I was a good girl and a good student. Ryan was afraid that people would talk about me, so he dyed his hair back to black and wore school uniforms properly every day. Even if he was lazy to listen in class, at most he would just lie down and sleep quietly and no longer skip classes. Every Saturday night, I would have a secret date with him. When he held my hand, his palm was full of sweat from nervousness. When we had our first kiss, Ryan's heart was beating very fast. He said, "Mia, I will definitely be good to you all my life." I liked his unruly black eyes. I liked the small brown mole by his collarbone. I liked his naughty smile. I liked that he was impatient and cold-faced towards others. But as soon as he saw me, His eyes were full of smiles and tenderness. I liked that every time he hugged me, he used all his strength, as if he wanted to blend me into his bones and blood. Later, I was admitted to college. After graduating from high school, Ryan opened a repair shop with a few buddies. Song Yi is one of them. We didn't break up. Whenever he has free time, he will take a train to the school to see me. Whenever I have a holiday, I will find him as soon as possible. In the second year of college, in Ryan's shabby rented house, I completely became his woman. With half a year's savings, he bought me a ring with platinum and inlaid with small diamonds. He said, "Mia, believe me, by the time you graduate, I will definitely have saved enough money to buy a house and marry you." While we were looking forward to a hopeful future, everything came to an abrupt end. 12. My dad said that Ryan is a rogue and a bastard. He told me not to have anything to do with such a person. Yes, Ryan's mother had a rather dubious past. It is said that when she was young, she made a living by being a mistress to men. In the end, she got pregnant. Naturally, the man would not marry her and gave her a sum of money to send her away. After she gave birth to Ryan, that sum of money was soon cheated away. She has no other means of making a living. It is said that since she was a child, her mother only taught her how to get money from men. That's all she can do. Ryan was raised like this by his mother when he was young. Later, when he grew up, he understood those pointing fingers and heard those vulgar words. He had many quarrels with his mother. On one hand, she promised her son that she would never do it again. On the other hand, when Ryan was busy in the shop, she secretly brought those men home. For the last time, Ryan went home to get something and accidentally that unbearable scene. Angry Ryan and that man fought. In the chaos, Ryan grabbed a fruit knife and stabbed that man. When his mother came to stop him, Ryan accidentally killed her. Steven was the one who came back with Ryan at that time. He went to the grocery store to buy cigarettes. When he heard the commotion and rushed upstairs, it was already too late. And when the injured man tried to escape and call for help, he was also stabbed to death by Ryan. Ryan ran away that night. Steven bought him some time. Before he ran away, he made the last call to me, broke up with me, told me to forget him, this rogue and murderer. I cried my heart out and begged him not to hang up and not to go. But he still cut off the call and ran away without a trace. Steven, as the only eyewitness, was still covering for Ryan at first. But soon under the police's offensive, he confessed everything. Ryan's crime of killing two people was confirmed and he was wanted nationwide. Later, it was heard that Ryan had smuggled to the Philippines. Later, it was heard that he soon lost his life in a gang fight and didn't even leave a complete corpse. His originally prosperous and thriving auto repair shop was taken over by Steven. Up to now, several branches have been opened. Other businesses with the accumulated capital 2 years ago. After I was with Steven back then, Cindy and her mother didn't pay much attention to it at first. Later, when Steven became rich, Cindy got close. It's not surprising that Steven hooked up with her. Cindy is beautiful and good at coquetry. Steven couldn't get satisfaction from me. Of course he quickly surrendered. 13 these years, they have become more and more bold and unrestrained. Fearless. Of course, Steven is now an outstanding young entrepreneur and a new star in the business circle. Cindy has long replaced me and is the legitimate eldest lady of the Zhang family. Although the Zhang family has long declined, a starved camel is still bigger than a horse. As for me, after my mother died, I was driven out of the house by my biological father. It's like a duckweed without roots. So what if I am bullied and humiliated? Who will say a word for me? In the past, I still had Ryan. When he was around, I didn't suffer a bit. When I was in college, Ryan was afraid that I would be wronged and looked down upon at school. The living expenses he gave me were twice as much as what my dad gave Cindy. But he is a fool. How could I squander the money he earned so hard? Unable to refuse, I secretly saved it all, waiting to bring it back to our little home when I marry him in the future. But Ryan and I have no future. We have no home either. 14. I walked down the dark mountain road. There is not a single ray of light. Even the stars and moonlight overhead are dim. I'm not afraid. So what if the mountains are full of cemeteries? In my opinion, the living are much more terrifying than the dead. Just my heart is not very comfortable. After walking a lot, I feel a bit out of breath. I stop halfway and want to take a break. I took out my phone and casually flipped through the messages. Steven just posted a moment on Moments, saying that he will be engaged next week. Many people commented and left messages. I saw my name in the comment area. I also saw Cindy's name. Steven replied to each one. I and Mia have broken up peacefully and will return to being strangers from now on. Yes. My fiancée is Cindy. My phone was almost ringing off the hook. But I didn't answer any of them. When I was about to turn off my phone, a strange number called. At that moment, for some reason, my heartstrings were strangely tugged. Somehow, I thought of Kevin. As if under a spell, I pressed the answer button. I miss Ryan so much, even though I know it's an illusion. But it doesn't matter. At least their faces are very similar. At least their voices are very similar. At least their scents are very similar. So, for me at this moment, what could be more important than seeing someone similar to Ryan? 15. While waiting for Kevin to come, I felt very cold. The night wind was very cool. I hugged my arms tightly. Sitting on the ridge of the field, I looked up at the lofty sky in a daze. If only Ryan were here. He would have taken off his coat for me long ago. Or wrapped me entirely in his overcoat. The headlights lit up in the distance. When Kevin's car stopped, I finally pulled my thoughts back from Ryan and our past. He got out of the car and walked up to me. I was sitting on the ground and had to look up at him. Did you break up? Yes. I was dumped. Kevin saw the fingerprint on my face. He hit you? His voice suddenly sank a few degrees. Then, his warm fingertips landed on my face. Actually, it didn't hurt much. But the moment Kevin touched my face, my tears burst like a dam. Back then, when I had a fierce argument with my dad, and he slapped me. When Ryan found me and saw the fingerprint on my face, he said the same thing. Looked at me with such heartache. And gently touched me. Come back with me first. Kevin took my hand, pulled me to the car, and opened the door. When he bent down to fasten my seatbelt, I raised my hand, hugged him, and kissed his collarbone. The car shook violently. I don't know if my vision was blocked by sweat or tears. I could only cling to him tightly by instinct. Ryan. Chen. I lost control and shouted Ryan's name. But before I could shout it a second time, Kevin kissed me hard on the mouth. In fact, he is a very cold and proper man. But at this moment, I saw crazy possessiveness in his eyes. Mia. I am Kevin. Kevin let me go, pinched my chin, and forced me, call my name. I shook my head and turned my face away, refusing to answer. His eyes were extremely gloomy, and his thrusting movements became even more violent and fierce. I couldn't help crying softly. Mia. Make it clear. Who am I? You are Chen. But before I could finish speaking, he lowered his head again and blocked my mouth. 16. Kevin drove me back to his place. Actually, the injury on my face was nothing serious. But Kevin still applied ointment for me. Go take a bath and have a good sleep. Kevin took a set of his own clean pajamas for me. You make do with it for now. I held the pajamas and watched him enter the bathroom. When the sound of running water started, I gently put down the pajamas and left quietly. 17. Kevin called me several times later, but I didn't answer any of them. I sent him a text message. Don't contact me again in the future. His life is full of brightness. I have already left 2 stains on his life. Mia. It's really enough. Mia. Shall we give it a try? I looked at the text message sent by Kevin. As I looked at it, tears fell down in a flurry. Back then, when I was chasing Ryan, Ryan said that I and he were not suitable, and not on the same path. I also said so stubbornly, Ryan, let's give it a try. Just give it a try. Okay? Later on, I often thought, if Ryan hadn't been with me, if my dad and my family hadn't loathed him and his mother so deeply, Ryan wouldn't have been so impulsive that day. Steven said that in fact, after the man was injured that day, he had escaped. Ryan killed his mother by mistake and his crime was not worthy of death. But Ryan chased after him to the corridor outside the door and stabbed the man to death. In this way, it became intentional homicide, and there was no way out. The autopsy report from the police is also like this. The man was stabbed in the back of the heart with a single knife and died on the spot. But I always feel that it shouldn't be like this. Ryan has said to me more than once. He was originally living in a swamp. With every step he took, he sank deeper into the mud. Because he met me, he desperately struggled to break free from the swamp. He wanted to have a different life with me. He was planning our future step by step. I don't believe that he, who is like this, would lose all his reason, cut off all the ways out for himself and me. But Steven told me, at that time, after Ryan killed that man, he said a sentence to him. I killed my mom with my own hands. My life is already ruined. Killing one more person. What does it matter? It's just pitiful for Mia. Steven, if you can give a hand in the future, then give a hand and help her. She has no relatives. 18. After Ryan disappeared without a trace, Steven once went to see me at school. Without Ryan, I seemed to have lost my pillar. Gradually, I turned to Steven for everything. Gradually, I became more and more dependent on him. During winter and summer vacations, I had nowhere to go and begged Steven to take me in. Steven let me move into his rented house. Later, Steven took over Ryan's repair shop and me as well. As an orphan girl with no one to rely on and a former boyfriend who is a murderer, Steven is willing to take me and take care of me. Everyone sighs that he is really affectionate and righteous. And they are all willing to deal and do business with him. I am like daughter grass, relying on him. Even later, he became more and more contemptuous of me, more and more disdainful, and didn't even treat me as a girlfriend or even a person. But I still shamelessly pestered him. Steven once said when he was drunk, how could Ryan have liked you so much back then? A woman like you is nothing but a pretty face. Mia, can't you have some backbone? I'm flirting with your sister like this. And you're not angry? I always look at him pitifully. But Steven, what would I do if I left you? I can't do anything well except for being good at studying. Indeed, after graduating from college, I couldn't even find a decent job. In the end, Steven got me into my current company. At that time, Steven once scolded with a smile, tell me what else you can do. You've read so many books, but they've all gone to waste. Worthless. What kind of love potion did Ryan drink from you back then? I really don't know why What happened back then? On the day Steven and Cindy got engaged, I went too. I was wearing a white dress, like a pitiful little white flower. Steven's friends tried to stop me, and not let me in. But my good sister, probably wanting to step on the pitiful me and enjoy the joy of her successful rise, insisted on letting me into the banquet hall. I sat at the farthest seat and watched Steven and Cindy standing on the stage. Cindy looked at me provocatively and triumphantly several times. I didn't react at all. Cindy seemed very disappointed. In the end, when Steven knelt on one knee and put a ring on her, I suddenly stood up. There was a commotion in the guest seats. The surprised expression on Cindy's face couldn't hide her excitement. Steven frowned and looked at me unpleasantly. But I stood there without moving. Just took out something from my bag and pressed it. On the screen in the banquet hall, some intermittent audio began to play. Ryan, don't blame me. Blame yourself for having bad luck. Anyway, you accidentally killed your mother. Killing one more is no big deal. This man treated your mother so badly. I killed him for you. You should thank me, right? Don't worry. After you die, I will take good care of me for you. And I will also run your repair shop well. Ryan, don't fucking pretend to scare me anymore. You couldn't beat me when you were alive. Even if you die, I will still make you disappear. Ryan, you've been smart since you were young. But how could you be wrong sometimes? I thought the woman you liked was so different. It turns out she is just a waste and a fool like you. The whole hall was deadly silent. Cindy suddenly screamed, Steven, what are you still doing? Hurry up and stop her. She must be crazy because she can't stand our engagement. Steven came to his senses and immediately jumped off the stage and rushed towards me. Mia, what's wrong with you? Even if we break up, you can't force Jadio to harm me like this. I held the thing in my hand and slowly backed away. At the same time, the screen began to play the pictures of surveillance videos. When I was on a business trip and not at home, Steven brought Cindy back to our place. She was wearing my pajamas and kicked my little dog. That's the little dog Ryan gave me. We named it Coke together. But it died. Not long after Cindy kicked it away. I buried it with my own hands. There was a lot of discussion among the guests. Pointing at Cindy. Her face turned pale and she collapsed to the ground with weak legs. Looking at her, I smiled heartily for the first time. When Coke died, I swore that I would make her lose everything. I finally waited for this moment. When my father finally came to his senses and rushed over to hit me, I threw a paternity test in his face. Mr. Zhang, come and take a good look. Who is the bastard? How does it feel? The so-called daughter you painstakingly raise is the bastard. How does it feel to raise someone else's daughter all these years? In fact, I got this report a long time ago. But I just want to, at this moment, in front of everyone, give them a hard slap. For the humiliation and grievance my mother suffered back then. And for me and Ryan, Mr. Jiang's face is really wonderful. If it weren't for the arrival of the police and the end of the farce, I really want to enjoy it for a while longer. With all these waves one after another, Steven should find it hard to accept. When the police came in, he staggered and almost fell to the ground. His expression gradually became crazy. Bitch. You bitch. After all these years, I looked at him and smiled very softly. Just like before when he looked at me. This fool. I also looked at him with disdain and coldness. Steven, thank you for really taking me as a cowardly and useless waste. A daughter of flower. Thank you for your arrogance and conceit. If it weren't for this, I wouldn't know the truth of the past. In fact, it is like this. If he didn't really think I was extremely stupid and a waste who couldn't live without a man. Steven. This person with a meticulous mind, who seldom talks nonsense even when drunk, wouldn't gradually relax his vigilance under my long-term disguise. Finally, word by word, he uttered the truth. When Ryan was fighting with that man, he touched a fruit knife and stabbed the man. His mother was afraid that he would cause a human life, so she rushed forward to stop him. In the chaos, she herself crashed into the knife. Ryan's mother was dying at that time. When that man saw that there was a human life lost, he was scared crazy and fled in a panic. As soon as he went out, he fainted on the ground due to excessive blood loss. Steven came back from buying cigarettes and heard the commotion and ran upstairs. He just saw I unthrow away the knife and calmly say that he was going to call me. But as soon as Ryan left, that man woke up. Steven, as if by a strange impulse, picked up a plastic bag and put it on his hand, and then picked up the knife on the ground. He stabbed the man in the back. Ryan originally wanted to turn himself in. After all, it was just an accident at that time. But he didn't expect that that man also died. He thought that man died by his own hand. He thought that there were 2 lives in his hands. He thought that he had completely no way back. 20 I sat in front of Ryan's mother's grave and drank up that bottle of cold shaku sip by sip. What will happen to Steven? What will happen to Cindy? And what will happen to the Zhang family? It seems that it has nothing to do with me at all. I touched the photo on his mother's tombstone, and murmured drunkenly, Auntie, if you have a spirit under the 9 springs, please send Ryan a dream. Let him come back. Okay? Even if he has to be in prison for 20 or 30 years. I will wait for him. In fact, I know that Ryan should really be dead already. Otherwise, after so many years, it is impossible for him not to give me any news at all. He clearly knows how much I miss him and worry about him. My life from 17 to 27 years old is filled with this person Ryan. Now my last wish has been fulfilled. It seems that I don't even have the will to live. When Kevin found me in the cemetery, my heart was almost failing. Ryan, I mistook someone again. But Kevin didn't correct me. He even nodded slightly and responded. The heartache made my whole body spasm and twitch. But I feel so happy. Ryan, we won't be separated again. Right? I held Kevin's hand and asked softly with all my strength. Mia, I won't let you die. But I don't want to live anymore. 21 Ryan, I don't quite know how that person got in touch with me. But presumably it took a lot of effort. He is completely different from our father. Very kind and very stubborn. I can't even resent him. He advised me to turn myself in. But I refused without even thinking about it. When I first smuggled to the Philippines, I still thought about going back. But later, I watched myself fall into the quagmire and my whole body was dyed black. I knew that I could never go back for the rest of my life. That person said, "For Mia, come back and start over." I looked at his face. A face very similar to mine. I am not without envy in my heart. If my mother had taken him away and left me behind, then is his life now mine? And should my terrible life be his? But there will never be his. I don't hate anyone. I just calmly accepted my fate. I told him not to contact me again. Only when Mia accepts that I am dead can she go on the road well in the future. 22 After this contact, almost another month passed. He got in touch with me again after many twists and turns. He said that Mia's heart is not good and she is almost dying. He asked me, "Do you want to come back? Maybe this is the last time." I know what going back means. But my Mia is about to die. And how could I just watch her die? 23 I said to him. Let Mia completely forget me. Let her live well for me with my heart. You are a doctor. A very excellent doctor. You will definitely have a way. Think about it. If she lives but still remembers the past, she won't be able to live well. Then what I do will be completely meaningless. But this is unfair to you. There is more than one thing unfair to me. I smiled at him very calmly. Maybe you will never understand how happy I feel making this decision. There will be other ways. Maybe Mia will soon wait for other donors. Your case also has a turn for the better. You won't be sentenced to death. We are all waiting for you. His voice sounded very panicked and trembled severely. In the end, there were even a few sobs. There's no time. Kevin. My voice is getting weaker and weaker. And it seems that all the blood in my body is about to run out. I took pills and can't live anymore. Don't waste time. Perform a heart transplant operation for Mia as soon as possible. Fortunately, although I have suffered a little these years, this heart is still relatively healthy. Kevin, remember to tell Mia to take good care of it and herself in the future, and don't make mistakes. Ryan, brother, this is the last thing I ask of you, and the only thing in my life. Promise me. Take good care of her and love her well. 24 Mia, I had a very long dream. In the dream, I cried and laughed. But in the end, after waking up from the dream, I couldn't remember the content of that dream at all. The male doctor in a clean white coat has an extremely handsome face. Every time I see him, I will be inexplicably moved. He said that he is my boyfriend. I just had a heart transplant operation, and haven't fully recovered yet. So I can't remember him for the time being. I don't quite believe it on the surface. But I am secretly happy in my heart. He doesn't talk much. With cold eyebrows and eyes and being sparing with words. Other doctors and little nurses in the hospital are a bit afraid of him. But this is not the case only in front of me. He always gently calls me Mia. When I do well in taking injections and taking medicine, he will reward me with a kiss. I like him more and more. I like him so much that I wish to possess him privately, and never let others peek at him even a little. 25 When it's almost time to be discharged from the hospital, he proposed to me. There are 2 engagement rings. He said that one of them was when we just started dating, and he didn't have much money. So that ring is all covered with small diamonds. But now he is rich. So the diamond on the ring is very large and extremely shiny. I like that very expensive and large diamond and ring very much. But in daily life, I prefer to wear the one set with small diamonds. After being discharged from the hospital, Kevin said that he would first take me to see the person who donated the heart to me. So I followed him to the cemetery. He bought 2 bouquets of flowers. I asked him why he bought 2 bouquets. Kevin's eyes are a bit red. He hugs me and strokes my hair. He and his mother are buried in the same place. For some reason, I suddenly feel an indescribable discomfort in my heart. Is there anyone else in their family? Does he have a wife and children? He once had a girlfriend he wanted to marry. But it's a pity. Kevin, if we have a baby in the future, let's recognize him as the godfather. Kevin looks at me and nods after a long time. Of course. I place the flowers in front of that person's tombstone. So his name is Ryan. Kevin. He has the same surname as you. Chen. Kevin stands there and doesn't speak. He looks at the 2 tombstones for a very long time. I keep thanking Ryan. I will definitely take good care of the heart you gave me. I will come to see you and Aunt when I have time. When I have a baby in the future, we will bring the baby to see you again and recognize you as his godfather. I take out a wet wipe and carefully wipe off the dust on Ryan's tombstone. There is no photo on his tombstone, but it can be seen from his mother's photo. He must be very good-looking. Mia, we should go back. Your body is still very weak and you can't get tired. Kevin holds my hand. I hurriedly nod. You are right. I just promised Ryan that I will take good care of his heart. Kevin strokes my temples again. Our Mia has always been very good and obedient. I throw myself into his arms and hug him tightly. Kevin, we will be together forever and never be separated. Right? Yes. We will be together forever. I am happy again and pull his hand and sway it back and forth. When we leave the cemetery and walk a long way, Kevin and I suddenly stop in unison and look back in the direction of the cemetery. We won't forget them either. Right? I look at Kevin and suddenly shed tears. We won't forget. Kevin smiles at me, lowers his head to wipe my tears, and then holds me in his arms. At least Kevin and Mia will never forget them.